In Lesson 1-5, we learned about 6 different angle pairs.
The angle pairs we will learn about are adjacent angles, vertical angles, supplementary angles, complementary angles, angle bisectors, and linear pairs.
The first angle pair we will talk about is an adjacent angle. An adjacent angle has two coplanar angles with a common side, common vertex, and no common interior points. As you can see in this angle, A, B, and C, C, B, and D are sharing a common vertex, which is B, and a common side, which is BC, which makes it an adjacent angle. To know whether or not this angle is an adjacent angle, you have to check for 3 things. A common side, which in this angle is OB, a common vertex, which is O, and no common interior points. These 3 things show that this angle is adjacent. In our second example, we have to check for the same 3 things. Whether or not this angle has a common vertex, which it does, Y, a common side, which is ZY, and no common interior points. These 3 things mean this angle is adjacent.
The next angle pair we will be talking about is vertical angles. Vertical angles are 2 angles whose sides are opposite rays. This is shown in the drawing. Angles 1 and 3 are opposite rays, and angles 4 and 2 are opposite rays. In our first example, to know whether or not this is a vertical angle, you have to check to see if the sides of the angles are opposite rays. In this example, angles K, E are opposite rays, and M and F are opposite rays, which makes this a vertical angle.
Next, we have complementary angles. Complementary angles are 2 angles whose measures add up to 90 degrees. Each angle is called the complement of the other. So in this angle, we have 60 and 30, which adds up to 90 degrees, making it a complementary angle, which is also a right angle. In our first example, you saw a right angle being bisected into 2 different angles. In this example, we see 2 coplanar angles whose measures add up to 90 degrees. Angle 1 is a complement to angle 2, which makes this angle a complementary angle.
Moving on to supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are 2 angles whose measures have a sum of 180 degrees. Each angle is the supplement of the other. In this example, we see one angle being bisected into 2 pieces. 140 degrees and 40 degrees equals 180 degrees, which makes this a supplementary angle. In our first example, you saw a straight angle being bisected into 2 pieces. In this example, you see 2 coplanar angles whose measures add up to 180 degrees. This makes this a supplementary angle.
Next, we have linear pairs. A linear pair is a pair of adjacent angles whose non-common sides are opposite rays. As you can see in this example, that this is an adjacent angle because the 2 sides share a common vertex and a common side. What makes it a linear pair is the fact that the 2 non-common sides are opposite rays. To know whether or not you have a linear pair, you need to check if you have an adjacent angle, which means that they share a common vertex, which in this case is M, and a common side, which is MN. They also need to have non-common sides, which are opposite rays, which in this case is LM and MO, making this a linear pair.
Finally, the last angle pair we will talk about today is angle bisectors. An angle bisector is a ray that divides an angle into 2 congruent angles. Its endpoint is at the angle vertex. In our first example, ray ST is the angle bisector because it divides angles RST and TSU into 2 separate angles. In our second example, we see that ray GI divides angle FGH into 2 congruent angles. The endpoint of ray GI is at the vertex of angle FGH, which makes this an angle bisector.
To conclude our lesson, we have some example problems we would like you to solve. So the first one is this angle adjacent? So an adjacent angle has 3 things: a common vertex, which is O, a common side, which is BO, and no common interior points. But In this angle, you can see that S is a common interior point, which makes this a non-adjacent angle.
For our second example, we are looking at vertical angles. Is this a vertical angle? The answer to the question is yes, because angles B and D are opposite rays, and the same goes for angles A and C, which are opposite rays, which makes these vertical angles.
For example 3, we have to find out whether or not this angle is complementary. To have a complementary angle, the measures have to add up to 90 degrees. So we have 135 and 45. If we add that, we would get 180 degrees, which makes this not a complementary angle.
For our fourth example, the question is this a supplementary angle? The sum of 110 and 70 is 180, and what makes it a supplementary angle is that the measures add up to 180 degrees, which means that this is a supplementary angle.
Example 4, is this a linear pair? Angles ABD and DBC share a side and a vertex and no interior points, which makes them adjacent. The other thing to look for is that the non-common sides have a straight line, which in this case they are, which makes this a linear pair.
Our last example is example 6. The question is this an angle bisector? The first thing you have to look for is that the angle is being divided into two congruent pieces, in which it is. The second thing you have to look for is that the endpoint is at the angle vertex. Ray ST starts at vertex S, which means that this is correct. That makes this an angle bisector. And that concludes our lesson 1-5 presentation. Thanks for watching.